Good morning, people, Anchor Community Church people. This is a message going to be posted on the 29th of November for you to listen to this week. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. We had a good Thanksgiving. We did get together with just one family, my son, and we were careful about not passing the coronavirus. Here we're meeting online again rather than in person. We plan to do this into January anyway, through the holidays, because people are getting together um, maybe several weeks into January to see if people get together for Christmas and to get together maybe New Year's. And anyway, we just want to be careful with the coronavirus. Looking at the numbers in Michigan anyway, the numbers seem to be leveling a little bit. We'll see what happens in the future. But I hope you had a good week and are staying safe. Let's get into our message for the day. All right, we are into near the end of the book of Judges. Today we're going to be talking about kind of an unusual story. As at the end of Judges here, it's called Micah, the Levite, and the tribe of Dan. I'm covering two chapters here today. I do not have every verse listed, but I have the verses that kind of follow the story, so you'll be able to follow the story. Okay, and my picture here is of the Levites. You remember Levites? This is kind of important to understand. The Levites were one of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, but it was not counted as one of the 12 tribes because it was specially set aside to be the priestly tribe, and they would rotate. Various members of the tribe of Levite would rotate into the priesthood, and were the people who worked in the tabernacle and into the temple, sacrificing and in the house of God. So a Levite plays an important role in our message today. So let's get into our message. Here is a bit of our humor for the day. 3 sons left home, went out on their own, and prospered. Getting back together, they discussed the gifts they were able to give to their elderly mother. The first said, I built a big house for our mother. The second said, I sent her a Mercedes with a driver. The third smiled and said, I got you both beat. You remember how Mom enjoyed reading the Bible, and you know she can't see very well. So I sent her a remarkable parrot that recites the entire Bible. He's one of a kind. Mama just has to name the chapter and verse, and the parrot recites it. Soon thereafter, Mom sent out her letters of thanks. David, she wrote one son, the house you built is so huge I live in only one room, but I have to clean the whole house. So she wasn't real happy with that gift. John, she wrote to another, I am too old to travel. I stay most of the time at home, so I rarely use the Mercedes, and the driver is so rude. So she wasn't real satisfied with the second gift either. Dearest Jeffrey, here's the third son. She wrote to her third son, you have the good sense to know what your mother likes. The chicken was delicious. Her eyesight wasn't very good, and that very expensive trained parrot she thought was a chicken. All right, so let's get into our message for the day. Let me talk about these last few chapters of the book of Judges. We have finished with all the various judges that are in the book of Judges. Now, Samuel is considered to be a judge if you get into the book of First Samuel, but he was not included in this book. You remember we talked about Gideon, Deborah, Samson. We just finished 4 or 5 sermons on Samson and a bunch of the minor judges. So we're all done with them. But the book of Judges ends the last few chapters here with two stories, several chapters each. We're covering 17 and 18 today, one of the stories. These are horrible stories about the sinfulness of Israel. All kinds of things in these stories, strange things in these stories, horrible sinfulness in these stories at the end of the book of Judges. The purpose of them is to show what it was like during the period of the judges. You remember the theme of the book of Judges. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. And though these few chapters at the end, these two stories, don't talk about any judges, they do show what life was like, the sinfulness that was going on during the period of the judges. All right. Here's my outline for this message today. We're first going to talk about Micah makes his idols. It starts with a man by the name of Micah, and he makes an idol. The Levite and Micah's proposal. Point number 3, the 5 men from Dan visit Micah, getting into chapter 18. Point number 4, the 5 men from Dan find a new land. We'll talk about that. Point number 5, the tribe of Dan takes the Levite. Point number 6, Micah tries to get him back, but he couldn't. And then point number 7, the tribe of Dan takes the new land. Okay, so there's my outline, working our way through this story. All right, first of all, Micah makes his idol. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. So he's just a guy they're talking about. They pick up this story, and the author of the book of Judges includes this story about a man by the name of Micah, lived in the hill country of Ephraim. He said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, I took it." So he's come back to his mother, felt bad. He had stole money from his mother. She was appreciative of that. His mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a carved image and a metal image, and it was in the house of Micah. So the mother appreciated that he had confessed to this, took 200 of that money that he was given back, and she had it made into an idol for Micah. Micah put it in his house. The man Micah had a shrine, and he made and household gods, and ordained one of his sons. So he built an area in his house, a shrine, put this idol in the middle of it, and he ordained one of his sons to be the priest. Here he takes his son, makes a robe, an ephod, and his son becomes the priest while they worship the idol. Okay, so point number 1, we have idolatry. Idolatry has been a horrible sin throughout the entire book of Judges. Every time they wandered from the Lord, they picked up the idols of the nations around them. You remember the first commandment, you're to worship only the Lord. But they broke the first of the 10 commandments. They broke it regularly through the book of Judges. And this story at the end of Judges is just another example of that. He didn't take anything of it. Made an idol, set up a shrine in his house. They didn't worship the Lord. They worshiped this idol that his mother had made. The blacksmith had made it out of the money that she brought to him, and he set it up as a god. Cross-reference, couple of New Testament references. Interesting, I think, how similar they are. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 14, the Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthians, says this: "Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry." Idolatry is a horrible sin. Idolatry leads to other sins. He says to the Corinthians, He calls them his beloved, his friends. Sometimes that's translated as friends. Therefore, if my friends flee from idolatry, run away from it. I, in my own mind, get a picture of Joseph running away from Potiphar's wife, fleeing from that sin. While Paul tells the Corinthians they are to flee from idolatry. Then John, in the book of 1 John, chapter 5, in fact, the very last verse of that book, chapter 5, verse 21, he says, little children, keep yourselves from idols. So idolatry, we need to be very careful about idolatry. Point number 2, the Levite and Micah's proposal, chapter 17, verses 7 through 13. I don't have all of those verses listed here, but now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite. Remember, I talked about the Levites. Levites was a tribe that was specially set aside to be the priesthood. So he was kind of considered by even the Israelites, when they worshipped idols, they looked at Levites as, oh, he's a holy man. They looked at him as being very special because he was a holy man. So this Levite is traveling, and he sojourned there. And Micah said to him, stay with me and be to me a father and a priest. I jumped down to verse 10 here. And I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year and a suit of clothes and your living. And the Levite went in. So he offered him. He says, I got this idol and this shrine, and I ordained my son to be the priest, but he's just my son. You're a Levite. I will hire you to come and be my special priest as a go-between. Remember, a priest was a go-between between the people of Israel and the Lord. Micah is hiring this Levite to be a special go-between, an intercessor, to go between him and his false idol sitting there. And Micah ordained the Levite, and the young man became his priest and was in the house of Micah. So he lived there, was his full-time priest. All right, so what do we see here? Well, we see a false priesthood set up. In Israel and the law, the Lord had set up a priesthood with the tribe of Levite, who was to worship in first the tabernacle, and then under Solomon they built the temple. They were to be the priesthood, the intercessors that would go between the people of Israel and make sacrifices for their sins. Kind of interesting. The priests had to first make a sacrifice for their own sin and then make a sacrifice for the people of Israel. But that was the only priesthood that was to be set up, and they were to be priests of the Most High God. And Micah totally disregarded this. They hired this Levite to come and be the priest for him in his house. I got a couple of New Testament references here from the book of Hebrews. Book of Hebrews tells us that the old priesthood has been set aside in the New Testament age, but we do have a high priest, an intercessor. He says here in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17, therefore he had to be made like his brothers, talking about the Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore he had to be made like his brothers. He became a human in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make propitiation, atonement for the sins of the people. Jesus Christ is our high priest. It's interesting. He had to be made like his brothers. After we finish the book of Judges, we're going to get into the book of Ruth. And the book of Ruth, the theme of the book of Ruth is that Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, a close kinsman who was to redeem Naomi's land and marry Ruth. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. He was made like us, so that he could be a faithful high priest for us, intercessing before God. Here's another one, Hebrews 4, verse 15. For we do not have a high priest who is unable, notice the double negative, In other words, we do have a high priest who is able to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who is in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Jesus knows what we go through when we go through temptation, when we go through hard times. Jesus was a human being. He experienced these things. He experienced temptation. Remember when he went out in the wilderness and was tempted directly by Satan, yet without sin. He is a high priest for us, interceding between us and God. Point number 3. 5 men from Dan visit Micah, okay, beginning of chapter 18. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Interesting that it says that. It mentions that several times throughout the book of Judges. And in those days, the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. Now, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this message, but they did have an inheritance that when they came into the land was divided up by lot, and Dan got their inheritance. We'll talk about that in more detail. But they weren't happy with it. They failed to drive out the Philistines and some of the other people, and those other people were causing Dan a whole bunch of trouble in the land where they were at. So they were seeking for themselves a different inheritance. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to explore it. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. So these 5 men, they're traveling, and we know about the hospitality of those days. They came to the house of Micah, and Micah took them in. And they said to him, "Inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed." And the priest, this was that Levite, that false priest, the priest said to them, as if he talked to the Lord, and he says to them, "Go in peace." So he's really a false prophet. In fact, that's what I got in my next slide. The sin that we see there, he's a false prophet. The Lord didn't tell him that. The Lord had already given Dan their inheritance. The Lord didn't want Dan to move because they had already been blessed. They had failed to drive out the enemy. But this priest simply says, "Oh, the Lord's going to prosper and you're going to have success." He was a false prophet. He told them what they wanted to hear rather than what the Lord said. We need to be careful about false prophets. We need to be careful about false teachers in our day and age. We just finished a number of months back, before I started the book of Judges, we had finished 2 Peter and the book of Jude, which was all about false prophets and false teachers who will take the word of God and pervert it. We need to be careful that we know the Word of God and do not allow false teachers to help us leave the truth. Mickey's been preaching on some of the lies that the false teachers have been teaching in the book of 1 John. I've appreciated that series that Mickey has had on that. We need to be careful about their lies. Here's a cross-reference. Matthew 7, verse 17. "Beware of false prophets," there they are, "who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." Yeah, so these kind of an interesting analogy here, picture that Jesus gives. Wolves coming down and mingling among the sheep, faking like they're sheep in sheep's clothing, but really they are ravenous wolves wanting to harm the flock and kill the sheep. All right, point number 4. The 5 men from Dan find a new land. And continuing on in chapter 18, verses 7 through 10. "Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish," way in the north. Laish was not an Israelite town. I'm going to talk about that. "And saw the people who were there, how they lived secure in security, lacking nothing that is in the earth and possessing wealth. So it was a very lavish. Um, they lived peacefully. They lacked nothing. It really looked like a nice area for these uh, 5 spies from the tribe of Dan. They came across the city of Laish, an area really. And when they came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brothers said to them, "What do you report?" And they said, "Arise and let us go against them, and we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good." So they went back. They told their brothers, the rest of the tribe of Dan, they reported back to the tribe, and they said, "Hey, we've found a great area. It's the city, the surrounding area of Laish, and we think that this would be a great area for us to leave this inheritance that the Lord gave us under Joshua and go up there and battle them and take that land from them." Uh, this is from this website, Bible Study Tools, about the city of Laish. It's the city of the Sidonians. The Sidonians were a non-Israelite Gentile nation that was just to the north, in the extreme north of Palestine. And they've got a couple cross references here in the book of Judges, chapter 18, where we are. It's also called Dan. Well, that's because Dan went up there and conquered it. And in Jeremiah, it is mentioned, the city of Laish. It lay near the sources of the Jordan, about 4 miles from Panias. The restless and warlike tribe of Dan, looking out for larger possessions, invaded this country and took Laish with its territory. That's what we're talking about in this chapter. It is identified with this particular tell in the book of Judges. And it's mentioned in Joshua chapter 11, verse 5. So the city of Laish and the surrounding area, they were wealthy. It was very prosperous land. It was Sidonian. All right, so here we find treachery and deceit. We find the tribe of Dan. They sent out spies sneakily. Is that a word? Sneakily. And they went up and they saw this, and now they're planning to go take it from them. You know, the Bible says that we need to not be deceitful, but we need to have honest and sincere motives. The opposite of treachery and deceit is sincerity. And we as Christians always need to be sincere when we deal with other people. Point number 5, the tribe of Dan takes the Levite. Okay, so now the whole tribe, bunch of men from the tribe of Dan. So 600 men of the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons and war, set out from Zorah and Eshtaol, where the tribe of Dan had its original inheritance. And when they went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, and the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" So they came right in. They stole all of Micah's gods. Maybe they felt they had value. This priest says to them, "What are you doing?" The priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the household gods and carved images and went with the people. I skipped 19. They offered him a job. So here, the tribe of Dan comes in and takes Micah's false idol and that whole ephod and that all that he had set up, and they even now hire the Levite to be their priest. So we have theft here. They didn't care. It all belonged to Micah. They came in and they stole. We obviously know that that is wrong. One of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not steal. We need to be honest in all of our dealings with people. Okay, point number 6. Micah tries to get him back. Okay, so Micah didn't like this. They took off. The Levite took off with him. Tribe of Dan now had his idols, and Micah, when they had gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out and they overtook the people of Dan. So Micah gathers all the neighbors and says, hey, the tribe of Dan, they're trying to steal stuff from me. And all of the people of the neighborhood, they came out and they overtook the tribe of Dan. The people of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you and you lose your life with the lives of your household. Whoa, they're threatening him. Micah, you come up here and you start yelling at us about stealing from you, you better be careful, because out of these 600 armed warriors, some might get angry and you could lose your life. Then the people of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back home. Had no choice. Though he had a couple of the neighbors come and help him, he wasn't going to be able to fight against those warriors from the tribe of Dan. So we find threats. Threats. Do you threaten? I think as Christians we need to be careful about that. So here we find the sin that they threaten to beat him up. Point number 7. I know I'm working through this pretty quickly, but I have some things here at the end that'll take a few minutes. The tribe of Dan takes the new land. Okay, so here we're getting down to the end of the book of chapter 18, and Dan goes up there to Laish, and well, let's read it. But the people of Dan took what Micah had made, and the priest who belonged to him, and they came to Laish, to the people quiet and unsuspecting, okay, and struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. So Dan went up there and conquered Laish. The people weren't at war. The people were quiet and unsuspecting. Dan just took them over. The people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves. And Jonathan, now here it finally mentions the name of the Levite. I don't know why it didn't mention his name before, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of captivity of the land. Isn't this interesting? All the whole time, the tribe of Dan had their own priesthood, worshipped their own God, never did. Now they moved to the north, so they were in, even when the kingdom split after Solomon, they were in the north and didn't worship the true God. So Dan had their own false priesthood, worshipped their own false idols, and it seems from this verse that they did not follow the Lord at all. So they conquered these people. They were quiet and unsuspecting, and we have violence taking place in the tribe of Dan. The tribe of Dan moves. I want to talk about that. The territory of the tribe of Dan inherited was west of Jerusalem and extended to the Mediterranean Sea. It extended north of the territory assigned to Judah. I have a map that we're going to look at, and south of the territory given to Ephraim. The Amorites prevented the Dan. Now, I want to go back and explain what I just said there. When, under Joshua, when they conquered the land, came into the land, they cast lots, and they believed that the Lord was in the casting of these lots, and that as they cast lots, each tribe would inherit its certain area of land. And then the tribe would cast lots and divvy up their territory for the various families that were in the tribe. Dan had a certain inheritance from the Lord as they divided up the land originally, the territory that the Lord had intended for them to have. In Judges 18, again, 1 through 31, it describes the city of Dan, or the tribe of Dan was not satisfied with the original inheritance that the Lord had given to them, so they decided to move. Dissatisfaction with what the Lord had given to them. You know, I think that this happens in our lives. We are dissatisfied with the lot in life, the things that the Lord has given to us. And we need to be very careful about that. Earlier in our text, it had been stated in beginning of chapter 1, in those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of Dan, the tribe of the people of Dan, was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. It wanted to find its own new inheritance. It was not satisfied with what the Lord had given to them. Cross-reference. Joshua 19. This is the dividing up of the land. The seventh lot, okay, they're casting lots for this land. The seventh lot came out of the tribe of the people of Dan, according to their clans, and the territory of its inheritance included Zorah, Eshtaol, and a whole bunch of other cities that are listed there. So it was, you remember, in the book of Joshua, they cast lots and they divided the whole land up. They had conquered the major cities, but each tribe was to go into their area and finish conquering it. The Lord would give them that, but they didn't do that. You remember the first part of the book of Judges, they did not finish clearing out the enemy in the land, and so Dan had all kinds of problems in its territory. Verse 47, when the territory of the people of Dan was lost to them, the people of Dan went up and fought against Leshem, and after capturing it and striking it with the sword, they took possession of it and settled in the Leshem Dan after the name of Dan. Yeah, in other words, that city, Laish, was renamed Dan. So this is talking, verse 47 is talking about this story in the book of Judges where Dan moved. Dan lost their tribe because they did not drive out the people that were there. They were not happy with the inheritance they had from the Lord. Here's Proverbs chapter 16, verse 33. Interesting verse. You know, we talk about God's providence, and when they were dividing the land up, they did it by the casting of lots, and like throwing dice in our day. And they believed that whatever it fell on, that was the Lord's working. Proverbs 16:33 says this: the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Isn't that an amazing verse? We think of chance, but nothing is chance. Every decision of that lot cast is from the Lord. So the land that Dan got, they were thinking, oh, we got this horrible piece of property simply from the casting of lots. We're going to go find our own land, our own territory. But it wasn't. It was a decision the Lord wanted Dan to have, that property. Here is the map of where they moved. Their property, their original property, was down there in the south. You see it circled down there, and they weren't happy with it, and they left and they moved up to the north of Israel. Here's some comments. The land was distributed to various tribes by casting of lots. Then the tribe's land was divided among the main family groups down to the individual families. That land that the family owned was supposed to stay in that family. It was the inheritance for the kids. We're going to see that in the book of Ruth. If they went into debt and lost the land, the redeemer, the kinsman redeemer, was supposed to get it back for the family. It was forever to stay in that family. I say here, look at the book of Ruth. And that land was given to them from the Lord. Here's an interesting cross-reference. This is what David felt, talking about his inheritance, not only his land inheritance, but his lot in life. David says in Psalm 16, he says this: the Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. In other words, you have control of my lot in life. We often use that expression, my lot in life. He says, you hold my lot. He says this in verse 6, the lines have fallen for me. In other words, the property lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. So David says, the inheritance that was given to me, I am very satisfied with. You know, our lot in life, many times it is a matter of our attitude. If we believe, well, this is what the Lord has given to me, and I'm going to live faithfully for Him in this particular lot in life, it will be a whole lot easier. It will become a beautiful inheritance for you. But if you are unhappy about it, if you are dissatisfied with it, it will be a miserable life for you. You need to choose to be satisfied with it. Paul says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 11, you know what this is? He says, not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Paul was content. The Philippians had brought them an offering and he was happy with it, but even when the money ran out, he was contented with it. His lot in life, he was contented with it. Are you content? Are you happy with the lot that you have been given in life from the Lord? Just a couple of side notes here. Let me take a couple of rabbit trails here. There's an expression that's found in the Old Testament a number of times. It says, from Dan to Beersheba. That's because Dan, who was originally at the south, moved way to the north. So the north is Dan, and Beersheba was way to the south. From Dan to Beersheba is a biblical phrase used 9 times in the Hebrew Bible to refer to the settled areas of the tribes of Israel between Dan to the north and Beersheba to the south. It came to be a phrase that means, the whole thing. I got the whole thing from Dan to Beersheba, we might say. And everything in the middle included with it. Judges 20, verse 21, then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba. See, there's that phrase. And it is mentioned 9 times, 8 other times in the Old Testament. And so it was just a phrase meaning, the whole shebang, we might say. That's a phrase we use. I don't know what a shebang is, but the whole thing from Dan to Beersheba. So here we see Beersheba was way to the south. Beersheba was even south of the original inheritance of Dan, and then Dan moved way to the north and conquered that city of Laish. An interesting cross-reference. Now, this is at the end of my message here. I want you to see this. In the book of Revelation, we have some verses that talk about the 12 tribes of Israel. Chapter 7, verses 4 through 8. Now, they're in the middle of the tribulation period, and there are 12,000 coming from each of the tribes of Israel. 12 tribes, 12 times 12 is 144,000. These special protected, they have the mark of God on them, evangelists who spread the gospel throughout the world during the tribulation period. I want you to see this tribe, this listing of the tribes here. And then I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. Israel's returned to the land, all the tribes, and 12,000 from each tribe makes up this 144,000. And now we have the list. 12,000 from the tribe of Judah were sealed, 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 from the tribe of Gad, 12,000 from the tribe of Asher, 12,000 from the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 from the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 from the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 from the tribe of Levi, notice that's mentioned, 12,000 from the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 from the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 from the tribe of Joseph, 12,000 from the tribe of Benjamin were sealed. Comments on this. Originally in the Old Testament, Levi was not considered one of the 12 tribes. It was the priestly tribe for them all. Jacob had 12 sons, but Levi was not considered one of the 12. But Joseph was divided into 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, and that made up the 12. Okay, so you had 12 sons. One is taken away because he's distributed among all of them, the tribe of Levi, but then Joseph was divided into two, Ephraim and Manasseh. So you got your 12 tribes that make up the land when they conquered it under Joshua. In this list in Revelation, Manasseh is mentioned, but instead of Ephraim, the tribe of Joseph is mentioned. Okay, so just another name. So that's okay. You got Manasseh and then Ephraim / Joseph. Okay, but Levi is in our list as one of the tribes. That would give you 13 tribes, except if you look at the list carefully, the tribe of Dan is not mentioned in the book of Revelation. I wonder why. I wonder if it was because they had been dissatisfied with what the Lord had given to them and they abandoned their inheritance and they got their own inheritance. They're not, I don't know, but it's just interesting that the tribe of Dan is not mentioned in this list in the book of Revelation. All right. Conclusion of our message today. We have Micah making up his own religion and worship. We need to certainly follow the true God that we are told about in the Bible. Certainly not following the law of the Lord. Then we have Dan, who was not satisfied with the allotment that the Lord had given to them in Joshua. We find then that the whole tribe of Dan makes its own worship, I say of the Lord. It really wasn't of the Lord, it was of Micah's idols. They came up with their own priesthood, their own idols that they worshiped until they were carried away into captivity. Again, this story is to show the sinfulness of Israel during the time of the judges.